Pune. And of course, he is known, right, for his thought-provoking articles in Gita Daily and the Spiritual Scientist. Just by hearing or just by reading those articles, a lot of atheists become theists, right? Prabhuji academically, intellectually, right? Or it could be interfaith conference, or it could be university program, corporate program, wherever Prabhuji has given the classes, right? He has really not only mesmerized them with his analytical and intellectual understanding of Bhagavad Gita, but also how to practice it steadily and systematically.
Isn't it?
So not only that, Prabhuji also can really touch anybody, right? Either the beginner or kind of, he could be the veterans in Krishna conscious movement for decades and decades. So we are very, very grateful to Prabhuji that he has chosen some time. He has a really busy schedule in Bangalore, traveling to all the centers, but still he came to our tiny, humble place to give us his association. Let's welcome His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji in our traditional style by loudly chanting Hari Bol 3 times. Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Grateful to be here with all of you today. And I'll speak today on how the Bhagavad Gita not only gives us a very important teaching, but also within its very structure demonstrates its teachings. So let's start with some basic points. How many chapters are there in the Bhagavad Gita? Anyone? 18. Okay. And so among these, which is the longest chapter? You know? Second. Okay. Yeah, second and 18. They are close competitors. The second has 72 verses. 18th has 78 verses. So in one sense, you could say that the Gita, if you consider a long class, is there. So a speaker may write in the beginning of the class, tell what are they going to speak. Then they speak it, and at the end of it, again, they tell this is what we spoke. So in one sense, if you consider the 18 chapters, so what happens is, so chapter 2 is like a summary of the Gita. And similarly, chapter 18 is also a summary of the Gita. So one of my main services is writing. And each of us, we see various things in Krishna consciousness according to our past experience. So if somebody is an architect, if they come to a temple, they will see the Lord of the temple, but they will also be attracted to the architecture of the temple, especially architecture. So like as an author, I like to scrutinize how a book is structured. So from that perspective, I focus on the ending of the Gita. And we try to look at the symmetry between the beginning and the ending also. So we could say as a text, the Gita ends at 1878. However, there are multiple conclusions, multiple places which could be considered as the concluding points of the Bhagavad Gita. Let's look at that one by one. So 78 is the 18th chapter. 78 is the final conclusion of the Gita. Now, apart from that, that is you could call it as it's a textual conclusion. The text is concluding at that time. Now, in the Gita, as the very name suggests, Bhagavad Gita. So, who is the main speaker? Bhagavan Krishna. And you could say the place where he concludes his speaking, that could also be called as the conclusion of the Gita. So, that is the 72nd verse. So, here we could say is the speaker's conclusion. Now, if we consider the Bhagavad Gita to be not just a talk given by Krishna, but as a discussion between Krishna and Arjuna. Say, just to take a contemporary example. Suppose you wanted to attend a program, but you couldn't attend the program, so you are watching a YouTube recording. So then, there's the main speaker who is speaking. So you could say that, okay, this video recording is about 2 hours, 20 minutes. The speaker's talk ends at quote 2 hours. So then maybe after 20 minutes there is a vote of thanks and there are other announcements and things like that going on. So that way we could say the Gita is ending in the 72nd verse. So this is if we consider the Gita to be a speech. Then 72nd will be the end. But if we consider the Gita to be not a speech but a discussion. It's like, suppose there is a question answer between two people. Nowadays you may see there are podcasts where two people have a discussion on some topic. So if two people are having a discussion, and then there is the host who is asking questions, and then the guest who is answering questions. So the guest may concluding speaking at a particular point, but after that, the host may speak some concluding words. So then where the host concludes speaking, we could say that is where the podcast is completed. So like that, if we consider the Gita to be a discussion, then where Arjuna completes his speaking. So that is, here there are Arjuna's words. This if we consider the Gita to be a discussion. If we consider it to be a discussion, then this is the conclusion of the Gita. Now, beyond that, so these are 3 conclusions of the Gita. Now there are a couple of other points also which should be considered conclusions. I'll mention them here, but I won't elaborate on them. So, there is, in one sense, Krishna who is giving guidance or wisdom or instruction in the Gita. So, Krishna's instructive words end a little earlier. So, actually they end at verse 66. This is Krishna here, this is last word, Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. After that, in one sense, what we have is something similar to what is in the Puranas called Phalashruti. What is the importance of this discussion? What is the result of hearing it, understanding it, studying it? So it's more like a glorification of the subject. So 66 we could say is the instructive conclusion. If you consider the Bhagavad Gita to be an instruction, then it ends at 66. That is the last instructive word that is spoken by Krishna. In one sense, the Gita concludes even before this. That is at 63. What happens in 63 is, Krishna tells Arjuna, now I have concluded my message. Now I have spoken to you more confidential knowledge than before. Now deliberate and do as you desire. So in terms of normally, say if a doctor is giving if a patient has some serious problem, somebody has got cancer, early cancer, but it is there. The doctor may explain, okay, now this is what has happened, this is what the tests are saying, and these are the various options for you. Now you could try to do chemotherapy, or you could try normal treatment for some time, or you could try this, you could try this. Now you decide what you want to do. Now you deliberate and decide what you want to do. So normally when somebody makes this point, now you deliberate and you decide what you want to do. That indicates then more or less it's concluded. So, in one sense, 63 can also be considered a conclusion from the point of view of what Krishna speaks, the content of Krishna's speech. This could also be considered to be a conclusion. So, at what point the Gita concludes, different acharyas have different understandings of it. So, let's focus on these two conclusions, the 73rd conclusion and the 78th conclusion. And let's look at how this demonstrates the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. So, to understand this, now let's look at first what is going on in the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita begins with Arjuna confused. Arjuna unable to decide what to do. So the Bhagavad Gita is many things. It is a life guide book. It can be it's teaching about yoga. It's teaching about how to live meaningfully. It's teaching about our identity. It is teaching about love for God. It's talking about how to surrender to God. You can talk. There are many things in the Bhagavad Gita, but literally from the context, the Gita is spoken as a guidebook for Arjuna to make a decision. Should I fight or should I not fight? So from that perspective, Arjuna in 2.7 so Arjuna in 2.7 asks the question, what should I do? Pruchhami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha. And he says, Sammudha, I am bewildered. So from, if this is 2.7, is, you could say, Arjuna's question. And then we have 18.73 as Arjuna's answer. Arjuna in 2.76, I am confused. Sammudha chetaha, I am confused. But in 1873, what is saying? Nashto moha smritir labdha. My delusion is all gone. I'm clear-headed now. And what does he say? Karishye vachanam tava. I will do your will. So Arjuna has, by understanding the Gita, become calm, become clear-headed, and has become ready to do Krishna's will. So now here, it's interesting. In 1866, Krishna tells Arjuna, surrender. Mamekam sharanam vraja. Now when he tells Arjuna to surrender, Arjuna in 1870 is saying, Karishye vachanam tava. I will do your will. That means he is surrendering. But how is Arjuna surrendering? Normally, when we think of surrender, we often think of surrender in terms of, if you just hear the word surrender, what is the image that comes in your mind? Anyone?
Losing independence.
Okay. Okay, let's keep one answer at a time. Losing independence is one answer. So, losing independence. That is true. It is like surrender, it is used in this sense. It is the reluctant acceptance of an unavoidable course of action. What is it? It is a reluctant, I would do anything other than this. But I can't do anything else. So it's like the reluctant acceptance of an unavoidable choice, unavoidable course of action. So this surrender, this conception of surrender is not a very pleasing idea. It's like, suppose a boy proposes to a girl, please marry me. And the girl asks, why do you want to marry? He says, because I have proposed to all the other girls in the city, nobody else is there. No, that is not at all a flattering proposal. In fact, you can't think of a less flattering proposal. so this idea of surrender is where there is nothing, I can't do anything else, therefore I do this. Now, in such a situation, if the girl accepts the proposal, then that means the girl really loves the boy. She really wants to be with him. Then even when she is the last option, she is accepting it. So for most of us, this is when we surrender to Krishna. When nothing else seems to be working, then we turn toward God. And still Krishna accepts us. So that is indicative of how much Krishna loves us. That is, you tried everything else, nothing worked, now you are coming to me, still I accept you. However, when we talk about love, if we really love someone, that is the first choice, not the last choice. So when we talk about surrender, this is often the conception. And that is why sometimes when words are translated from one language to another, their connotations are lost. The words have there are literal meanings, that's what the dictionary means. And there are the meanings which are associated in that particular language. But they cannot get translated. So in the English language, surrender usually has a negative connotation. And that connotation is not present in Sharanagati. The word Sharanagati or Prapadye has actually a peaceful, joyful, sweet, loving connotation. So this is a problem in literary theory. It's called lost in translation. When you take something from one language to another language, it's lost. And this often happens. Sometimes it happens to words also, but more often it happens to phrases and idioms. So, for example, in Hindi there is a saying, there is a kahavat, "Laaton ke bhoot, baaton se nahi mante." Now you translate this into English. The ghosts of kicks don't learn by words. It makes no sense at all. So, like that, the word surrender in English doesn't convey, so there's a denotation is the literal meaning. So words have these two things. When we have, okay, is this visible or this color is not visible? Visible. There are denotations. Denotations means what they literally mean. And connotations is what is signified by those words. So yes, from a denotational perspective, surrender is equivalent to Sharanagati. But from a connotation perspective, it's not the same. There's a negative connotation to surrender, where there's a very positive connotation to Sharanagati. And in general, if we want to use words properly, we need to also be aware of the connotations of words. And that's why if somebody has learned a language simply by reading books in that language, but has never spoken that language with somebody who speaks that language, then their language comes out to be a little stilted. They start using words which are not appropriate. So anyway, Sharanagati, that is one image of a general who is frustrated. Two people are fighting and one army is defeated, but they just don't want to accept defeat, but they have no option. So that's one idea. Any other thoughts come in the mind when we talk about surrender? Any other images? Something from the devotional or spiritual tradition?
No free will.
No free will. Okay, that's one thing. That means surrender means I just don't have. It's more or less the same thing. I don't have any choice. I give up my choices basically.
They don't keep any choice. Somebody else to decide.
Leaving to others to decide.
Okay, you let somebody else decide for you. I surrender to you. Okay, that's true. That is, and it's again, it may be because again I have no options, or it may be because of some other reason. We'll come to that slightly. To give the example of Draupadi. Now Draupadi is often the iconic image of surrender. It is that when she raises her hands and she just calls out to Krishna. And at that time, she is the emblem, the iconic image of surrender. Now, actually, if you consider or contrast Draupadi's surrender, Draupadi is raising her arms when she surrendering to Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna to surrender, and Arjuna says, yes, I will surrender. And Arjuna also raises his arms, but he raises his arm. Yet arms are his weapons. He raises his arm which carries his bow. Isn't it? So Arjuna's surrender is categorically different. Arjuna is there, Krishna is surrendered, I raise my arms. Whatever you want. No, whatever you want, I accept that. No, that is not the mode of surrender over here. So surrender can have two very different expressions. And both of them have their importance. So one expression of surrender is dependence. We just express our complete dependence on Krishna. Krishna, you are in control, nothing is in my control. I just accept your will. That is Draupadi surrender. So complete dependence. So the image of this is Draupadi. However, that is not the only way of surrender. Another is what we can call as diligence. Diligence means I take the responsibility to do my duty. I take up my responsibility. So this is more Arjuna's surrender. So let's try to understand the difference between the two of these things. In one sense, in life, there are some things in our control and some things not in our control. So surrender means there is dependence on Krishna for things out of our control. So for the things that are beyond our control, we depend on Krishna. Krishna, let thy will be done. That is one of the concluding verses of the Bible. Jesus says that. Let thy will be done. That is, I accept your will. So that is for the things that are not in our control. But it is also Gita surrender. It's not that let thy will be done. It is I will do thy will. It is I will do thy will. So this is for things in our control. They are two different things. The things that are in our control, our surrender is expressed by doing those things properly. And both of these, dependence and diligence, both are required for surrender. Long ago, maybe 25 years ago, when I just started giving classes, so one senior had given me a list of some 10 guidelines for giving classes. And the last was depend on Krishna. In bracket, but only after you have prepared your class. So, yes, while giving a class, we may forget certain things, we may not be able to connect certain points. Sometimes people may ask questions from which we don't have answers. So for all those situations, we have to depend on Krishna. But before that, when we are preparing, that time we need diligence. We have to prepare properly. Otherwise, we can't do that service properly. So in our surrender to Krishna, both are important. For what is not in our control, I accept Krishna. I surrender. I accept whatever is your will. But for what is in my control, I accept my responsibility to do your will. And this aspect of surrender, these two aspects of surrender are welded together in the song of Srila Prabhupada, where he says, Markine Bhagavad Dharma, Nachao Prabhu, Nachao se mate. Kashtera putrali jatha, Nachao se mate. So he's saying that, make me dance, O Lord, make me dance. As a puppet is dancing to the tune of its master, let me dance. So Prabhupada in message is saying, I want to, that it is your will that is to be done. But he's saying, it is I who will be doing the will. The puppet is dancing. So it is not this, I'll be passive, I'll Krishna, you do everything. No, it is I will do, but what you want me to do, I'll do it. So accepting God's will and accepting our responsibility to do God's will. Both are surrender. Let's take a medical metaphor to illustrate this point. That when you talk about surrender, so at one time, 15, 17 years ago, I had fallen severely sick. So at that time, I had been repeatedly falling sick again and again and again. I was not recovering. So finally, went to a doctor. I went to a devotee doctor and they diagnosed it. And I had TB at that time. So he said that now, if you have to recover from TB, he said you have to follow Bhagavad Gita. I said, okay. He says, you have to. The doctor joking. He said, you have to forget all your dharma and surrender to me. So he said that you need to take more rest, you have to take this kind of diet, you have to do this, you can't do this. And he said, your surrender has two parts. You accept that you will not be able to, you do your normal service. You cannot meet 20 people, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. So accept whatever is beyond your control, accept that. But surrender also means you have to take the meal at this time, you have to take this medicine, you cannot do this, you do this. So surrender has these two accept. We accept God's will. That means how it is happening around me. Okay, this is happening here, this is happening in my health, this is happening in my situation. We accept God's will. But then we also accept the responsibility, not just the responsibility, you can say here, accept our responsibility to do God's will. If we do only one, I accept God's will. Okay, but God's will is not just something which is happening around us. If we are parts of God, God's will is meant to happen even through us. So in that way, accepting the situation around us and also accepting our responsibility to change the situation, to improve the situation. Both are parts of surrender. And both are important. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita's context, we will see that the primary mode of surrender is the second part. Accepting one's responsibility to change the situation, to do God's will. Krishna wanted Arjuna to fight. And therefore, Arjuna fights. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam both talk about bhakti, but in terms of contextual application of bhakti, the two are opposite. How opposite? In the Bhagavad Gita, the primary focus is that we should do God's will. Some of you may have seen this Gita Sar. That is there sometimes in shops and homes. जो हुआ वो अच्छा हुआ, जो हो रहा है वो अच्छा हो रहा है. Whatever happened was good, whatever is happening is good, whatever will happen will also be good. Well, I have read the Gita probably over 100 times. I met devotees who have read more than 100 times the Gita. We discussed. None of us has been ever able to find any verse similar to this in the Gita. So there is a nice sounding teaching, but that is not the teaching of the Gita. And it's certainly not the Sar of the Gita. Now, the focus of the Gita is not about what is happening. Because Arjuna's starting question is, Pruchhami tvam dharma sammudacheta. Here dharma means, what should I be doing? What is the right thing for me to do? So, the Gita's question is not about what is happening. The primary question the Gita's answer is not what is happening, but what are we going to do? What should we be doing? So, the Gita's focus is more on accepting our responsibility to God's will, to do God's will. Whereas in contrast, the Bhagavatam's mood is almost opposite. Okay, the curse has happened, Parikshit Maharaj has accepted the curse, and now accept that curse as God's will and just immerse oneself in hearing. In hearing and can be absorbed in hearing. But that same Parikshit Maharaj, when he is a king and he hears that Kali has infiltrated into his kingdom, he doesn't say, oh, I am surrendered to God, I accept God's will. If it's God's will that Kali Yuga is going to start, let it start. Yes, that may be what is happening in this world, but as long as I am in the position of the king, I have to do the responsibility of the king. And that means I have to protect my citizens. Not just protect them materially, but also protect them spiritually. So surrender can have different forms. And to the extent we have some ability, we have some initiative, we have some energy, if we can make a difference, if we can change things for the better, we should make the endeavor to do that. As devotees, how we do it? We do it in the mood of service. What is the mood of service? Service attitude doesn't just mean, okay, I come to a temple and I chant and I do my sadhana. Yes, that is service attitude, no doubt. Continuing this theme, when we talk about service attitude. One is, we serve, we practice, okay, let me put it as, there is what we can call as immersive bhakti. That means just immerse ourselves in Krishna. We turn away from the world and we absorb ourselves in Krishna. The Bhagavatam demonstrates primarily immersive bhakti. Just forget the world. Just hear, chant, do katha and just forget the world. That is one aspect of bhakti. That is, just what is happening is God's will, just accept it and turn toward Krishna. But bhakti has another aspect, that is what you can call as inclusive bhakti. Inclusive bhakti means we understand that the world is also included in the domain of our service to Krishna. So, God is not present only in the temple. God is present everywhere in the world. And He can be served everywhere. Yatah pravrittir bhutanam yena sarvamidam tatam. Swakarmana tam abhyarja siddhim vinnati manava. That Supreme Being from whom the whole world has come, that Supreme Being by whom the whole world is pervaded, that Supreme Being can be worshipped through one's work. Swakarmana tam abhyarja. Krishna says. So here, the point I'm making is that the Gita's conclusion is more on inclusive bhakti. Yes, Arjuna is meant to remember Krishna, but after remembering Krishna, he is to act in the world. He is to act in the world to establish dharma, to fight the war as a service to Krishna. So for us, depending on our situation, sometimes there will be more of inclusive bhakti, sometimes there will be more of immersive bhakti. But both are parts of bhakti. So Arjuna's focus is more on the bhakti where accepting the responsibility to God's will. So if I understand that God is the well-wisher of everyone, then that means God wants good to happen to everyone. And therefore let me be a part in bringing about God's will. So let me play a part in improving things, in trying to raise people's consciousness, in trying to create facilities by which people can raise their consciousness, in making sure that things in the world are in a reasonably orderly way so that people can focus on raising their consciousness. So this is also a service to Krishna. Now, through Arjuna's example, Krishna demonstrates this inclusive form of bhakti. When we serve Krishna in this world, the Gita's conclusion at 1878 will say, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara, Tatra Shri Vijayo Bhutir Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. That where there is Krishna and where there is Arjuna, there will be victory, there will be prosperity, there will be glory. Now this verse raises a question. Actually, where there is Krishna, there will be victory. Where there is Krishna, there will be prosperity. Isn't it? Krishna is Lakshmipati. So wherever there is Krishna, there will be Lakshmi. So why is Arjuna needed to be mentioned over? Isn't it? Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Tatra Shri Vijayo Bhutir. That verse could have been simply like that. So why is Arjuna included over there? Because the purpose of the Gita is not just to glorify God's position. The purpose of the Gita is, it is not just to proclaim God's position, it is actually to transform man's disposition. It is to inspire all of us to become like Arjuna. Yes, wherever there is God, there will be victory. But if we become devoted to doing God's will like Arjuna is, then there will be victory for us also. So the focus of the Gita is, and that's why I said, जो हुआ वो अच्छा हुआ. That is not the message of the Gita. जो हम कर रहे हैं क्या वो अच्छा है, वो गीता का सवाल है. Your question is whether what we are doing is good or not. So if we align with God's will, if we try to serve, if we try to use our intelligent abilities to make things better in a mode of service to Krishna, then there will be victory, then there will be success. So that is one point of the Gita. That you do God's will and there will be glory for you. And that is a very life-affirming message. All of us have been given certain abilities. All of us have been given certain interests. And we all can use those abilities and interests to make this world a slightly better place. Now we may say this world is always dukhalaya. It is never going to become better. Well, it's not that simple. Yes, it is dukhalaya. It is a place of distress. But what is the meaning of that verse? That it is dukhalaya. It is, say for example, we can say there's a place called Himalaya. Now what does Himalaya mean? The place of snow. So if somebody goes to the Himalayas, they are going to experience cold because it's snow. So if somebody says they go to the Himalayas and they say it's so cold, it's so cold, it's so cold, it's so cold. No, people around them will get better. What you are saying is so old, so old, so old, so old. It grew up, it's going to be cold over here. But is cold the only thing that we experience in the Himalayas? No. There is amazing beauty to see. The sky, the mountains, the flora, the fauna. And there is beauty to see over there. If somebody has interest in trekking, there is adventure over there. If somebody is a spiritual seeker, there is spiritual adventure. We can go to Adi Badrikashram and all those holy places. So there is so much more. There is beauty, adventure, purification, spiritual fulfillment. All these can be experienced. But all these can be experienced only after the person stops complaining. It is so cold, it is so cold, it is so cold. Well, get used to it. You can wear the warm clothes if you want. But stop letting cold be the only experience that you have. Once you accept that reality, it is going to be cold. Then you can experience so many other things. Similarly, when the Gita says this word is dukhalaya, what it means is there will always be some dukkha or the other in our life. But that doesn't mean that dukkha is all that we will experience in the life. If we constantly keep complaining, oh, this thing is, my boss is not good, my spouse doesn't listen to me, my children don't obey me, my health is not good, my weight is too much or my weight is too little, I'm too fair, I'm too dark, I'm too tall, I'm too short. There will always be something which will keep us dissatisfied. But if we can shift our focus away from that, then there is so much more to experience in life. Each one of us can live with meaning and purpose. Each one of us can make a constructive contribution. Each one of us can make a difference. But all that is possible after we accept. And there will never be a situation when our life will be completely free from misery. If somebody goes to the Himalayas saying that my goal is to be free from cold. Well, you're in the wrong place, isn't it? In the Himalayas, you cannot have the goal to be free from cold. Similarly, in this world, if our goal is to be free from misery, then that's the wrong goal. We will never have that. We can never be free from problems, but we can be full of a purpose that can make the problems worthwhile, that can make the problems bearable. So that is what the Gita is. Arjuna still has to fight. He has to fight against his relatives. That's not a palatable thing to do. In fact, few things that could be as unpalatable for Arjuna as fighting against his relatives. Especially his teacher like Drona, his grandfather like Bhishma. But what Krishna does for Arjuna is, Krishna expands Arjuna's purpose. Let me explain this point. See, if this is the person, and say this is a problem. So, problems are something which we are going to experience in our life. But if we dwell only on the problem, then that problem becomes the only experience of our life. However, if we have a big purpose, then the problem becomes small. It becomes bearable. Just like say if this is a big festival, Janmashtami, and this place is extremely crowded. All of you are sitting very close to each other. It's not particularly comfortable. Now, if you didn't want to come to the program at all, somebody has forced you to come, then what will happen? It's such a crowded place, so it's a noisy place. It's so hot over here, it's so uncomfortable. That is what we'll be thinking about. If we had no purpose in coming here, then the problem consumes our consciousness. But if the purpose is, this is Janmashtami, I want to celebrate, I want to hear about Krishna, I want to remember Krishna, I want to offer my heart to Krishna. And then there are so many devotional stimuli over here. That as we focus on that purpose of absorption in Krishna, that it is very crowded, that it is very noisy, that it is very hot, all that becomes paled out. It becomes a small thing. Yeah, it's not every day that I will like this. It's just for a few hours on this special day, I can bear it. So, the Gita does not make Arjuna's life problem-free. Rather, the Gita makes Arjuna's life purposeful. And when it becomes purposeful, now what is the purposeful? That Arjuna is thinking, killing my own relatives for gaining a kingdom. It's not worth it. He says, Rudira Pratiktan. The kingdom will be contaminated by blood of my relatives. It's not worth it. But Krishna expands Arjuna's vision. He says, you are not fighting this war to just win a kingdom. He says, you are fighting to establish the rule of virtue, of dharma in the world. And don't think you are killing your relatives. Actually, you are liberating them. You think your arrows will hurt Bhishma and Drona? Actually, Bhishma and Drona are already in a hurting situation. Because they have to fight for Duryodhana. Duryodhana, they didn't like Duryodhana. They were obligated to fight for Duryodhana. If you fight against them, you may think that you are killing their bodies. But actually what you are doing is their souls. And you are liberating them from this obligation where they have to fight on the side of vice. And because they are virtuous souls, because they are devoted souls, they all get elevated to a higher destination. So Krishna expands Arjuna's worldview so that he can see a bigger purpose in what he is doing. And then that fills Arjuna with confidence. That fills Arjuna with energy. So Arjuna's being Nashto Moha Srutin Labda, his energy coming back, his clarity coming back, that is itself the Gita demonstrating its teachings. That the Gita says if you do God's will, then you will be elevated. You will be joyful. You will be successful. And Arjuna's words and subsequently Arjuna's victory in the Kurukshetra war, that will demonstrate the Gita's teachings. So, when we study the Gita, when we try to live the Gita, what are we trying to do? Yes, we are of course chanting, we are practicing bhakti, but we are empowering ourselves with a higher purpose in life. We are not just doing a job for the sake of doing a job. Yes, we are doing a job. Some people may be agreeable, some people may disagree. But through it all, we are serving Krishna. And that higher purpose can make our immediate problems bearable. So that is one way, through Arjuna's example, the Gita demonstrates Krishna's teachings. However, there are 5 verses that are spoken after that. And these are the verses spoken by Sanjay. Now, why are the Sanjay's verses there? You could say just for symmetry because the Gita starts with Krishna and Arjuna, Dhritarashtra, Sanjay's discussion. That's why it ends with Sanjay's words. But okay, see, the Gita is an emergency book. Emergency book means it is spoken right in the middle of a battlefield. It's in the middle of a battlefield, it's a serious occasion. So, it's not a serious, it's an emergency occasion. It's like, there is a very critical surgery to be done. And then the whole arrangement for all the surgery has been done, the surgeon is there, the assistants are there, the patient has been given anesthesia, the operating table lights are on, and suddenly the surgeon and the assistant surgeon, they start talking. And they keep talking. And they keep talking. Everybody else knows what is happening over here. Why are you not doing the surgery? So if the two of them are talking, they must be talking something very urgent. Otherwise, they would not put aside. If you just want to have a chat, there are many other times to have a chat. So, it is a very critical situation when they are having a discussion. So, why does the Gita include Sanjay's words also? We could say that, yeah, the Krishna and Arjuna conversation is already over. But still, the way the Gita is structured, that normally Sanjay's words are also included. So, why are those words included? Because Sanjay's words also demonstrate Gita's teachings. Let us see how. This will be the concluding part of the talk. Sanjay speaks 5 verses. So in the 74, 75, 76, 77, 78. So I'll focus on 77 and 76 and 77 primarily. In 75, 74 basically, there is appreciation of the Gita. इत्यहं वासुदेवस्य पार्थस्य च महात्मनः संवादमिमं श्रौषम् अद्भुतं रोमहर्षणम्. Such amazing conversation I've heard. So that is appreciation of the Gita. Then there is gratitude. That's the key theme of the next verse. Gratitude toward Vyasadeva. Because it is by his mercy that he had the special power. Although he was in Hastinapur, he could see what was happening in Kurukshetra. व्यास प्रसादात् श्रुत्वा एतद् गुह्यमहं योगं योगेश्वरात् कृष्णात् साक्षात् कथयता स्वयं. That which Krishna himself spoke, I could hear it. Why Vyasa? That's gratitude. And then we can say 78 is the prophecy. The first verse, Dhritarashtra is asking, what happened on the battlefield? Now, Sanjay is indirectly answering the question by saying that actually your sons are not going to be successful. In English there is something called euphemism. Euphemism means you tell the same truth in a softer way. So if the truth is told, but if somebody gives a class and nobody likes the class, and somebody asks, how was the class? You can say, the audience was not impressed. Or sometimes we will say that if we go and take food at somebody's house and the food is not very good, and then they ask, how was the food? It was edible. Now, to simply say it is edible, it is actually criticism by faint praise. It should be, of course it should be edible. It should be much more than edible. So, sometimes the harsh truth is told softly. So, Sanjay is doing that. Sanjay is not telling your sons are going to die. It's too harsh a thing to say. So, he's saying, wherever there is Krishna and wherever there is Arjuna, there will be victory. That means, your sons are not on that side, there will be victory over them. So indirectly he is telling that. That's a prophecy. But 76 and 77 are especially relevant for our discussion. So in 76, he's saying, Tacha samsmutya Rajan samsmutya samvadamim adbhutam Keshavarjuna yo punyam Rishyami cha muhurmuhu. So he says, there is remembrance of Krishna's words. And 77 is Tacha samsmutya Rupa bhaktyadbhutam hare Vismayo me mahan rajam Rishyami cha punah punah. There is remembrance of Krishna's form. The common element in both of them is Rishyami. There is delight, there is thrill, there is ecstasy. I'm thrilled. Rishyami. Rishyami cha murmu, Rishyami cha punah punah. So what is happening over here is Sanjay, as he's speaking the Gita, after he has finished speaking the Gita, his mind is going back. Oh, this is what Krishna is doing. This is the form that Krishna revealed. Krishna revealed that magnificent universal form, and that magnificent universal form came from that 200 form. How magnificent is this 200 form? So he's remembering it and he's thrilled. So here, the Gita demonstrates another aspect of its teachings. The other aspect is that in one sense, Krishna spoke the Gita to Arjuna and Arjuna's heart was transformed. So we could say Krishna's mission was successful. So, let's put it this way. Krishna spoke the Gita to Arjuna and this was success. Success in the sense that Arjuna's heart was transformed. The same message Sanjay spoke to Dhritarashtra. Was Dhritarashtra's heart transformed? No. There was, we could say, failure. So, there was failure in terms of Dhritarashtra's heart was not transformed. But there was success here. Sanjay's heart was transformed. Sanjay's heart is enriched with the remembrance of Krishna. The remembrance of Krishna's message. And the core part of Krishna's message is devotion to him. That's why Krishna is born. And this demonstrates a very important principle in Bhakti. That is, when we do God's will, when we try to do God's will, sometimes our situation will be like Arjuna. We do God's will and things work out successfully. We go out for book distribution, we're able to distribute many books. We try to share Krishna Bhakti with others and people accept it and they start practicing Krishna Bhakti. But sometimes we try to do God's will and our situation is Sanjay. Now we try to do, but it seems that people just things don't work out. However, when we try to do things better in a mood of service to God, sometimes things will become better. But even if things don't become better, we will become better in that process. So there is external success that comes for Arjuna. So to conclude this whole class, I can demonstrate, I can summarize in this one simple illustration. So Gita's teaching is, we could say, do God's will. Now when we do God's will, sometimes we may have external success and internal success. And sometimes we may have only internal success. Now Arjuna demonstrates both of these. Arjuna is ashtamos, all his illusion is gone. He is confident, he is clear-headed. And he will eventually gain victory also. Now Sanjay, his words don't have an impact on us, on Dhritarashtra. But those words, just by speaking them, there is an impact in his own heart. And that's why when we do any seva, when we are trying to share Krishna Bhakti with others, we are trying to distribute books or speak some philosophy, we are at one level doing it for others. But another more important level, we are doing it for ourselves. So when we try to serve Krishna, then irrespective of whether things change for the better or not, we will change for the better. Just by the attempt to serve Krishna, our heart will become enriched with Krishna's blessings. And in one sense, this is the highest demonstration of karmanyeva adhikarasti ma phaneshu kadachana. That Sanjay is doing his karma. That, yes, I have been told to transmit the events of Kurukshetra. I'm going to transmit that. I'm going to speak the message of the Gita. But if Dhritarashtra is not impacted by that, Sanjay is not agitated by it. Sanjay's focus is not only on Dhritarashtra. Sanjay's, by speaking the Gita, Sanjay's focus has become on Krishna. And because he has become focused on Krishna, that's how he is enriched. And both these dynamics are demonstrated in Srila Prabhupada's life. Srila Prabhupada for 40 years was trying to share Krishna Bhakti in India. And he tried in so many ways. He initially tried to start several businesses to try to raise funds so that he could contribute to his Guru Maharaj's mission. And if you look at Prabhupada's life, he was in Kolkata, then he went to Allahabad, then he came to Mumbai, then he went again to North India, Jhansi. In those times, people were not so mobile. Nowadays people just get jobs here and there and they travel. In 1920s, person relocating one place to another to start a new business, that is not common. Prabhupada did that. He was very vigorous. But somehow not one of those businesses was successful. He tried to start back to Godhead, and that didn't work. He tried to work with his god brothers, but they were not really interested in expanding the mission. He tried to start a league of devotees in Jhansi, and that didn't work. The very people who were hosting him, they turned against him. They said, we want to do something else. So nothing seemed to be working. But Prabhupada never became bitter. Prabhupada was never disheartened. Generally speaking, we may start our life with big dreams. If you ask some 4, 5, 6-year-old boy, what do you want to do? He says, maybe I want to become the next Sachin Tendulkar, or I want to become the next president of America. I want to do this, I want to do that. They are big dreams. And then, as they start going through life starts beating us. Life starts showing us our limitations. Sachin Tendulkar, I can't even bat against this neighborhood bowler. Isn't it become the president of America? I can't get my class students to vote for me in the class election. So we all start realizing our limitations. So when life beats us and life foils our dreams, by the time that same person in the age of 5 or 6 says, I will become the next president of America. By the time he graduates, if I get a job, it will be good. So, generally, life beats us down. And there is failure. When failure happens, then further beating happens down. Srila Prabhupada, again and again and again, he experienced failure. Oh, he tried so many things, nothing worked. And what happened? Prabhupada's dreams did not become smaller, they became bigger. Nobody in India was listening to him. He said, I'll go to America and preach. You cannot preach to Indians, how are you going to preach to Americans? So people could have said that. And at that too, now you're old. But Prabhupada was completely focused on Krishna. At one level, we could say that his preaching was not successful. But at another level, his preaching was successful. Because he was connected with Krishna. He was focused on Krishna. And even when he went to America, it was people who met him. Even when he was an unknown Swami walking on the streets of America, people noticed that there's something sublime about him. As if he was living at some other level of reality. He was so peaceful, he was so joyful. That because Prabhupada was living in Krishna consciousness. If Krishna wants, success will manifest in this world. If Krishna doesn't want, I started by surrender in 2 ways. Accept God's will and accept our responsibility to God's will. So if it is God's will that for the first 40 years there was not much success in Prabhupada outreach, Prabhupada graciously accepted that. Prabhupada kept trying. And then the kind of success that he got was extraordinary. The last 10, 11 years, he wrote over 70 books, he traveled across the world 14 times, inspired millions of people to take up bhakti, helped build over 108 temples for Krishna. It was stunning. But through it all, Prabhupada's focus was on Krishna. One time somebody asked Prabhupada, Swamiji, how do we preach all over the world? And Prabhupada said, Krishna is all attractive. I just presented Krishna, he attracted everything. So, of course, Prabhupada did a lot, but Prabhupada didn't become infatuated by success. And even toward the end of his life, he achieved a lot of success, but there were also some things which just didn't get complete. Prabhupada worked so hard to try to build the Juhu temple. And after Srila Prabhupada departed, 3-4 months the Juhu temple was inaugurated. But when it became clear that his body was just not cooperating, and Prabhupada was asked in the last days, do you have any last wishes? And Prabhupada said, Kuch ichha nahi. He worked so hard to start the Juhu temple. He worked so hard to write the Bhagavatam. That was his life's biggest contribution to Prabhupada on the 10th canto. Prabhupada could have said, oh, I'm unhappy that I have not completed on the Bhagavatam. I'm unhappy because I cannot see the Radha Rasa Bihari temple. No. Prabhupada, this is what Krishna wanted me to do. I have done that. So if Krishna wants me to leave, there are times when we accept Krishna's will, there are times when we accept our responsibility to Krishna's will. So sometimes when there is devotion, there will be external success. The devotee is happy with that. But sometimes when there is devotion and service of devotion, sometimes there will be no external success. But a devotee is happy even with that. Because the devotee's focus is on Krishna. And this way, through these two examples of Arjuna and Sanjay, the Gita demonstrates its teaching. That when we do God's will, we will always be successful. Sometimes the success will be externally manifested and things will become better. But sometimes the success may not be externally manifested, but still our heart will become better. We will become pure, we will become enriched by Krishna's mercy. And that is also a success. In fact, that is the most important success. So in this way, the Gita has everything for all of us. We may have some phenomenal talents because of which we do some service, we get extraordinary success. Sometimes we may think, I have no talents. Well, for Krishna, it doesn't matter whether we have talents or not. Krishna doesn't see our talent, he sees our intent. If you have talent, that's good, you can use it. But how much is your intent to serve Krishna? Krishna sees that and he's happy with us if we keep that intent and serve him wholeheartedly. So I'll summarize. I spoke 4 main points today. The first point I spoke was the Gita's ending. We discussed the textual ending at 78, the speaker's ending at 72, the conversation ending at 73, the instructive ending at 66, and the narrative ending at 63. But we focused on the last 2 endings, the 73 and the 78. So what is the Gita's message? Arjuna is confused, and Krishna clarifies Arjuna's confusion through the message of the Gita. So 2.7, if it is a question by Arjuna, that his question is answered, is told by Arjuna when he says, I have become clear-headed. So what is this clear-headedness? He's surrendering to Krishna. There we discussed the surrender in 2 forms. So surrender is through dependence and it is through diligence. So for what is God's will, we accept that. Let thy will be done. But it's also, so the example for that is Draupadi. But I will do thy will. That is also surrender. So for what is beyond our control, we accept it. Situation gracefully. What we can do, we do wholeheartedly. The Gita's focus is more on the second part. Accept our responsibility to God's will. The Bhagavatam's focus is more on accept God's will. And both are required in different situations. And then we discussed about how Arjuna's success is there. It is not that the Gita makes Arjuna problem free. The world is always going to be dukhalaya whether we are practicing the Gita or not practicing the Gita. But what the Gita does is, it gives a higher purpose by which the problems don't consume our consciousness, but they become a small part of our consciousness. Just like somebody goes to the Himalayas, they'll experience cold. But if they are going there for adventure, they're going there for purification, they're going there for spiritual experience, that focus will make the cold bearable. So what the Gita does is, it doesn't make our life problem free, it doesn't remove Arjuna's problem, but it makes his life purposeful. It shows Arjuna a higher purpose. By fighting this war, you're not hurting Bhishma and Drona, you're actually helping them become elevated and liberated. And the last part was Sanjay's success. That when we do God's will, for Arjuna, there is external success that is going to be manifested. But for Sanjay, there is no external success. And yet, there is internal success. That is, he is internally enriched. He is internally satisfied. So for all of us, when we are trying to serve Krishna, whether it is through our direct seva in the temple, whether it is through our professional responsibilities, social responsibilities, familial responsibilities, whatever it is, we don't know. Sometimes we'll be extremely successful, sometimes we'll not be. But if we try to act in a mode of service to Krishna, we can make things better. But even if we can't, we can make ourselves better. And in that way, one who serves Krishna will be ultimately successful. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Are there any questions or comments? Please.
very nice, enlightening, analytical presentation, Prabhuji. I have not heard that how the conclusion, because initially we were thinking the theme, how, what exactly will come out, we really didn't know, but the way you really brought up how Sanjay's like verses are also having a lot of meaning. Thank you very much for sharing that. So the question is, Prabhuji, like how to understand like God's will. Like Srila Prabhupada, he put a lot of effort, right, realizing Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur's will. And at the same time, like as you said, towards the end of his like earthly pastime, he said, "Aur kuch ichha nahi," like, so how do you really kind of see that, okay, what is Lord's will and how far we should really try it out and want to really say that it's a Lord's will? What is that kind of that line?
Okay. So, this was a question I hope nobody will ask. So, how do we understand what is God's will? Yeah, that's a tough question, but let's start with some basic points. So, if I understand your question right, what you're saying is, if we are doing some endeavor, how much should we keep doing that endeavor? Should we think that it is Krishna's will that I keep doing this, keep doing this, keep doing this, even if I don't get success? Or it is Krishna's will that maybe this is not meant to be, so I stop doing this? Well, both are true. In the sense that you can say if we consider a river is moving towards there's an ocean over it. The river is moving towards the ocean because it's a straight line, but it's not a straight line. If there's a blockage, if there's a blockage, if there's a block over here, the river may go below, the river may go above, the river may go just pierce, and then the river may go. So like that, for us, our consciousness is meant to go toward Krishna. Our consciousness is meant to go toward Krishna. And sometimes we may take a particular service, a particular responsibility, particular situation we are in, and we continue through that. And if something doesn't work, then what do we do? So you look at Prabhupada's example, Prabhupada was fixed in purpose. And Prabhupada was flexible. How do we change this? Prabhupada was flexible in path. That means, okay, if things didn't work in India, let's try America. He went to America. This person in New York, things didn't work out, then he went to the Lower East Side. If that didn't work out, he tried something else. So similarly for us, we are fixed in our principle. I want to serve Krishna. But exactly what will work out, we don't know. So we do a particular service. If it works, we continue it. If it doesn't work, we try to think whether is there something wrong that I am doing? Is it not working because of the particular situations? And then we talk with senior devotees, consult our spiritual guides, we introspect, we pray and decide, should I just continue doing this or should I shift to something else? When we talk about God's will, it is not that God's will is like one narrow path. And if you get off this path, you're no longer doing God's will. So Krishna's will is more like a direction than a specific path. Because Krishna wants us to use our individuality. Krishna wants each one of us to use our individuality to offer ourselves to Krishna. It's like if you consider, if you're a parent. Now, you may want your children to do your study, take responsibility, you grow up nicely. That is good. But, if a child has some ability and they make some plan and do something good, and they tell you, I studied for this exam or I developed this skill and I won this award, you may not have told them to do it, but if it's something which required effort, something which is worthwhile, you'll be so much more happy. Isn't it? So, it is not that Krishna wants us to give up our individuality in order to do His will. Rather, Krishna wants us to use our individuality in doing His will. So that's why it's not that we have to be constant fear. Am I doing God's will? Am I not doing God's will? Let's focus on, am I intending to do God's will? Is my intention to serve Krishna? Is my intention to act in a mode of service to Krishna? If that is there, then gradually what is God's will for us will become clear. Sometimes some things work, sometimes some things don't work. So, don't focus too much on on the on worrying what is God's will. Focus on simply trying to serve Krishna. And then if this service is not, try the other service. If this is not working, try something else. Does it answer your question broadly?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, the way you said it seems like as though you should go with the flow. In the sense, sometimes things may work out your way and sometimes it may not work out your way. So, how do we know when to give up and when to bounce over those speed breakers and when to really pierce through, or to
I
change
think
our course?
that depends on two things. There's no one answer for this. It's position and disposition. Our position is our external situation. What is our role? Our varana, for example. Our disposition is our internal nature. So some people, they by their very disposition, if something wrong is happening, some people may just say, forgive and forget. Some people may say, this is unjust. We have to fight it. We have to change it. Now, is one right, the other wrong? Not necessarily. Some things are especially important for some people. Something is not that important for others. So that's the disposition. But simultaneously it's a position. If we have taken up a particular responsibility, say if somebody is a police person and they see some crime happening in front of their head and they say, chalta hai. He goes happening. Well, an ordinary citizen also should not, they should at least do something to report the crime or something. But okay, the ordinary citizen, I don't want to get involved. But if a crime is happening and the police says, I don't want to get involved. But what are you meant to do then? So if we take a particular position, then we have to persist in the responsibility of that position. But if we feel this responsibility is too much, then we may decide I don't want to have this position. So there's no, that's what I was trying to say in this answer also, there's no one way. It's not something which is like, this is giving up. It's not, as devotees, it's not so much as giving up as it is taking up something else. If one thing is not working, we take up something else. Prabhupada was trying in India, Prabhupada was going back to God. It was not really effective. If Prabhupada gave that up, but Prabhupada was thinking, I am giving this up. Prabhupada thinking, I am taking up something that may be more effective for Krishna. So, as devotees, there's no one answer. Sometimes we may decide, yes, I tried, this enough. We can try to explore, did this not work because I didn't endeavor enough? Or is this because, now we can always say I could have endeavored better. But we all have human limitations, we all know. So this I tried reasonably, this I didn't try over. Sometimes is it because I didn't endeavor enough, or sometimes it's just because the situation is not right. If you consider the socio-cultural perspective, in India, in the post-independence India, just for 2-3 decades at least, was very much obsessed with political change. So that time India was just not so ready for spiritual message. But in the 80s, 90s, it became much more ready. So Prabhupada at that time accepted that at this point things are not going to be effective in India. So we have to make our audience endeavor. Honestly, we first make a wholehearted endeavor as we can, and then we have some honest introspection, candid introspection. Is it because I didn't do my best? Well, I can say I can always do better. But in that situation, I did my best, whatever I could. So it's not working, maybe this is not going to work. So, when some things don't work, they could be because my endeavor was not good enough, or they could be because the situation is not right. So then we try to find out what it is. And if the situation is not right, then maybe we have to move to some other situation. We have to try something else. Our endeavor is not right, we can make more endeavor. But then there has to be reasonable limitation to endeavors. We can't just keep in this, where was I? A month ago I was somewhere, and there was this boy who was trying to appear for IIT JEE, and it was the 9th attempt. I told him, if it's not meant to be, don't worry about it. Move on with your life. If you don't, if it's not meant to be, okay, once, twice, thrice is okay. It's not, once you get into a job and everything, if you are from IIT, that's a good thing, but afterwards it's ultimately your competence at the job that matters. So we have to have a sense of proportion. Prabhupada says intelligence means to see things in their proper perspective. That, say, if we are trying to share Krishna Bhakti with someone, and we spend hours and hours and hours on that person, and at the end of it, the person says, "But you know, does God even exist?" Well, maybe that means trying to push that person, maybe they're just not ready at that. So we can help the unable, but we can't really help the unwilling. Isn't it? So we have to decide. In this case, the situation is not right. This person is not receptive right now. So move on to someone else.
This happens especially during book distribution when you get stuck on one person.
Yeah.
You feel you want to just, you feel empathetic towards that person, but the person is not ready for the message yet.
Yes,
We have to
that's
go
true.
on.
It's like, suppose sometimes, I don't know how much it happens in India now, but maybe 10, 15 years ago, sometimes you try to start a car and the car doesn't start. So maybe you call some people, please push the car from here. And now they push the car, we're trying to start the car, and together we get the car moving. But suppose the people from outside are pushing the car, and the person inside has gone to sleep. Or worse still, the person inside is pressing the brakes. Then the people outside, why should they be pushing the car? So we have to see it like that. If we are trying to push someone towards Krishna and the other person from inside is pressing the brakes, then stop pushing that person. There are so many other people who we can try to connect with. Thank you. Yeah, yes.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for such a wonderful lecture. Give a wonderful perspective on Gita. Prabhuji, a practical question in terms of the way you put up the discussion between Lord Krishna and Arjuna and discussion between Sanjay and Dhritarashtra. So you talked about heart transformation. Arjuna also had, and he had association of Krishna directly. Dhritarashtra was in the association of, Sanjay was in the association of Dhritarashtra. And when he was speaking, he was literally seeing in the front that Dhritarashtra heart was not transforming. And in the end you mentioned that, but Sanjay's heart got transformed. So in practical life for us also, even though we are not in a great association, and how to understand this, that if we are not in the association of devotees and we are doing some service which is having a bit of a struggle, then still that could lead to our transformation than being part of the association of devotees.
So sometimes when we are an association of people who are not exactly devotionally inclined and they are not transformed, then how do we ensure that our transformation happens?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Well, we do need association sometime or the other. Sanjay, also there are many sages who came and advised Dhritarashtra. Sanjay heard their words. So we do need good association. And now how much good association we need, that is something which we have to individually assess. So basically we could say that for all of us, we meet with a range of people. We do a range of activities. If we talk about people, there are some people who they increase our strength. Being with them inspires us, it energizes us, it brings the spring back in our step. Now there are other people, like as soon as they enter into a room, the room seems to become darker. Like they seem to be, spreading negative energy wherever they go. They're called chronic fault finders, critical, like that. So now we already have some people like that. So what happens is, it is when you want to talk about balance. Balance means that the people who are the association that gives us strength should be more than the association that takes away our strength. Both are needed, because sometimes for functioning in life, even a devotee association, sometimes there are some difficult people, they're devotees, but still it's difficult to work with. So that's understandable. We are all different, we have different natures. Some association takes our strength or requires us strength. Some association gives us strength. So we need to take inventory. And which are the people interacting with them takes a lot of energy. And which are the people interacting with them gives me energy. And we need to make sure that this is greater than this for us. with the people, that our interaction, not necessarily in terms of time, but in terms of overall quality, that the association that gives us strength is greater than the association that takes strength. That's how we will be able to sustain ourselves. Thank you.
Sorry, please.
So I have a question relating this theme of Gita and Bhagavatam. So here Sanjay is completely transformed. He's very he would have been much more happy if Dhritarashtra was accepting the teachings of Lord Shri Krishna. At the same time, when we see in Bhagavatam, when Dhritarashtra is following Vidur's spiritual advice and going away, Sanjay is lamenting he is lamenting a lot. And at that time, I feel that if Sanjay must have been happy because he's seeing Dhritarashtra following at least someone's spiritual advice.
Okay. So, while Sanjay lamenting when Dhritarashtra follows Vidura's instruction and goes away, it's a good question. See, there are two different aspects over here. There is the personal relationship between the two of them, and there is Dhritarashtra's spiritual destiny. That Dhritarashtra's spiritual destiny, he's gone choosing an auspicious choice. That is good. And for that we are happy. But still Sanjay had served Dhritarashtra for a long time. And Dhritarashtra was not a bad person. And Dhritarashtra was not, in today's term, what we call a bad boss. He was weak, he was manipulated by Duryodhana. But he was not exactly an evil person. So Sanjay had a bond of affection with Dhritarashtra. And his lamentation was because Dhritarashtra had just left like that without telling him. So in our life, suppose that we are very close to some person who is also a devotee. If they depart from the world, we are happy that they have gone on to a higher destination. But still we lament that, that we have lost their association. Maybe if we knew that there's something that was happening, we could have spoken some words of appreciation. See, generally, death is going to come to everyone. We are going to lose our loved ones. But if there is some emotional closure in a relationship, then there is a sense of completeness. But if there is no emotional closure, then it can be quite painful. I could have spoken some words, I could have sought forgiveness, I could have expressed my appreciation. So many times, if people are very close to death, so I have several friends who work in hospice care, I talk with them and I've seen also with my eyes. So when the person is maybe an old, 75, 80-year-old woman, doctor says she's going to die, but somehow she's still living. And then maybe she had a quarrel with her daughter and they not talk for a long time. And she wants her daughter to come. And then somehow the daughter comes and they talk. For a few minutes they have a talk and they end on a cordial note. They forgive, forget, and then if they have that emotional closure, then she departs. So emotional closure is important. So Dhritarashtra's lamentation, Sanjay's lamentation is not that Dhritarashtra has what choice is. He is happy for that choice. But the fact that their relationship ended so abruptly, he is lamenting primarily for that. Thank you. Okay. We complete.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So while you were discussing this conclusion of this Bhagavad Gita, I just remembered the pastime of Yashoda Damodar, doing her best effort and depending on the Krishna's mercy. But here the topic is about surrender. Their mother Yashoda is loving Krishna. So could you please connect these two pastimes because it appears too similar.
Okay, so in Yashoda time, now Lord Damodar, there are two endeavors. There is Krishna's mercy and there is her endeavor. There are the two fingers short as we see. So we could say that we doing our endeavors, we trying to be conscious of Krishna, at one level that itself is success. That means even when Yashoda was trying to tie Krishna, Krishna was pleased with her love. Krishna was having a reciprocation with her even at that time. But eventually, when Krishna's mercy manifested in a particular way, then she succeeded in tying Krishna. So that was, in some ways, we could roughly approximately connect it with external success. So when we endeavor, our very endeavor is internal success. The fact that we are practicing bhakti and continue to practice bhakti, that itself is one level of success. And when we practice bhakti, and sometimes there is success as a result of the practice of bhakti, then that is actual success. So Krishna's mercy is the second finger that completes the particular sense of Yashoda in time alone. So it's that we have to do our part, and then Krishna will do his part. Now, when Krishna will do his part, how Krishna will do his part, we don't know. Yashoda might not know that. Okay, now she told us in the clock. 5 minutes I've been trying to tie, now Krishna is a time now, it will be completed. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, no, we don't know. Prabhupada didn't know it was whether his outreach will be successful after 1 year or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years or 40 years. Prabhupada keep trying to tie the knot, and eventually it worked. So that's the correlation, that we focus on internal success and by in our endeavor itself, and by Krishna's mercy sometimes external success will manifest. Okay. Last question.
Thank you for the class. The short question is, out of curiosity, I wanted to know who divided these chapters of Bhagavad Gita, because it was a conversation and it's 40 to 45 minutes between Krishna and Arjuna.
Okay.
Like from this text to this text, how and on what basis they divided.
So who divided the Gita chapters? Yes. It's certainly not that Krishna is saying Ataha Dvitiyo Adhyaya. Krishna and Arjuna just having actual free-flowing discussion. So Vyasadeva put that in a particular structure. Sridhar Swami in his Bhagavatam commentary, he explains this point. He raises this question: is scripture literally the exact narration of events as they happened over there? So he says yes and no. Because yes, in the sense that Vyasadeva is faithfully replicating the events that have happened over there. But no, in the sense that Vyasadeva is an author. And an author plays an authorial role. So in the Bhagavad Gita, there is this particular section. It is Krishna speaking to Arjuna. That is what is important. But the particular division, this is the first chapter, the second chapter, this division comes in the Mahabharata itself. And depending on the recension of the Mahabharata, generally this is considered to be chapters 23 to 40 in the Bhishma Parva, which is the 6th Parva of the Mahabharata. So there, Vyasadeva itself has done the chapter division. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Jai Gaur Premanand.
Hare Krishna.
We are very, very, very grateful to Prabhuji for spending some time with us, and as we had expected, it was really mind-blowing presentation, intellectually, analytically, devotionally, so profusely Prabhuji narrated this Bhagavad Gita. Yes, Prabhuji, as we see, he has brought out so many books, every day he is mining the jewels of Bhagavad Gita with so many acronyms, so many concepts, so many analogies, so many things, we feel that we have never heard that Bhagavad Gita and has so much jewels in it. So we are very, very grateful to have Prabhuji with us, and only pray at the Lotus Feet of Gandhari Giridhari Mahaprabhu that they saw their choices, blessings upon Prabhuji, that Prabhuji continue to bring out these jewels for our purifications, for our upliftment, and also if he can come down to more and more times to share this with all of us, so that have a deeper absorption in those teachings. So, and let's once again pray at the Lotus Feet of Gandhari Giridhari Mahaprabhu to keep Prabhuji always in healthy, and he continues to shower their blessings upon all of us. Let's chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you. So I have written a few books. So much of what I spoke today is in these two books. This is Srila Prabhupada gave us Bhagavad Gita as it is, and then he also said that write your realizations, every day write something. So study scripture from different perspectives. So this is Relishing Bhagavad Gita. Both of these have 100 articles with about 80 diagrams, similar to simple illustrations like what I was drawing over here. So this is the Bhagavad Gita from a relational perspective. Now the Bhagavad Gita is not just philosophy, but it is actually the expression of Krishna's love for Arjuna expressed through the medium of the philosophy. That is ultimately divinity's love for humanity, expressed through wisdom. So this it follows the mode of Krishna Chaitanya Thakur in presenting the Gita as a relational discussion. So many of the verses in the Gita are related with incidents from the Mahabharata between Krishna and Arjuna. And so if you want to see how the Bhagavad Gita can nourish our bhakti, the various kind of conclusions of the Gita, all those that's explained in this book, Relation Bhagavad Gita. This is the Gita from a rational perspective. This follows broadly the mode of the spirit of Baldev Devajan's commentary. So when we read the Gita, both of these, basically there are 100 articles and they have 100, each article they have a question and answer that question. So this is, if the Gita says be detached, if we become detached, then what will motivate us to work at all? Won't we become lazy? Won't we become irresponsible? The Gita says, if God controls everything, then do we really have free will? If the modes do everything, then why are we held responsible for our actions? If Krishna is equal to all, then why is he on the side of one particular person? So questions like these are answered in this book, Bhagavad Gita Insights. And this is the Gita from an applicational perspective. There's 365 articles, and each one article is one page. And this is basically how the Gita can give us guidance for facing life situations. So there is a section with about 50 articles on how to face challenges in life, then how to resist temptations, face challenges, experience problems, grief, loss, and how to be less judgmental in our relationships, how to be more sensitive in our speech, how to not be ritualistic when doing our devotional activities, how to see Krishna's love in this world, in our daily life. So there are 3 broad sections: nourish yourself, nourish your relationships, and nourish your devotion. This is the Gita from an applicational perspective. Each article is just 1 page, so you can easily just read in 2-3 minutes, and there are some reflection, questions, and a verse from the Gita on which the article is based. And this is the Gita from an inspirational perspective. There's a friend of mine, he says this is Gita for lazy people. What he meant is that this is this 365 quotes inspired by the Bhagavad Gita. So this is based on Bhagavad Gita 1873. Look up and things will look up. It means we look up and see Krishna existing, Krishna's plan in our life, and life will become more positive. So each of these is inspired by one particular verse from the Gita. If you Google it, it will take you to my website gitaji.com. There's an article explaining this. But even without that, the course has explained it. And this is especially good for if you want to introduce Bhagavad Gita to people who are not so spiritually receptive. People may not read a book, but they can just read a quote. And if you keep this on your workplace or your home in the reception hall, if friends come and see a quote, if it interests them, then that can start a spiritual discussion. So all these 4 are also available as a set. Unfortunately, right now we are out of sets, so this is the last one available. Anybody can take one if you want. But we are ordering more, and they should come within a week or so. So if any of you want, you can just give your names, and we will have the book sent to you within a week or so. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
इस चैतन्य चरण प्रभु की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, सर्ववेद भक्त वृंद की जय। Thank you. We'll circulate the form with their requests, or devotees can share their details, and that will be handed it over. So we'll set the logistics.